Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of 1998 Represent. On this episode, we're talking about John Carpenter's Vampires. So, I had never seen this movie until about like a day or so ago. I think I remember seeing the trailers for it very vaguely in 1998, and I guess this came out like toward the end of the year. I guess the release date was like day before Halloween '98, so October 30th. But I thought, like for some reason, I remember seeing the trailers. What seemed like it was much earlier in the year. I don't know why I thought it would maybe like even like January. I'm probably misremembering it, and I might be thinking of there was some other horror movie that I think came out in January that I'm probably just like flipping the release dates with that one and this one. But this one's available to watch on Netflix. I remember a couple days ago just filtering it by year and not seeing a whole lot of movies from 1998 still on Netflix or movies that I hadn't already covered for the series. So decided to watch it. I had a pretty good time watching it. It's pretty cheesy, but it's a pretty fun, just kind of like cheesy vampire movie. I'm gonna get my notes, so we got some quick notes to go over, and then I'll kind of just discuss the plot points and like what I thought of the movie. So let me just pull my notes up here. So yeah, John Carpenter's Vampires, released October 30th, 1998. Apparently, it was adapted from a book called Vampires, with the S at the end of Vampires being a dollar sign. That was by the book by John Stakely. There were two direct-to-video sequels that were made for this. I don't think they were John Carpenter movies, but there was Vampires Los Muertos and Vampires The Turning. Two direct-to-video sequels following up on this movie. Apparently, the rights to this movie got like kind of like I think sold in like the early '90s. I remember reading that Dolph Lundgren was initially potentially going to be cast in the role that eventually went to James Woods. There was talks of Willem Dafoe also being in the film as well. They ended up going with James Woods, which I think was kind of an interesting choice because it was like I don't think James Woods had done a movie like this up to this point. The only thing I remember there was a Simpsons episode where James Woods takes a job at the Quickie Mart to prepare for a role like it's just like a classic Simpsons episode. But it just was kind of like how it feels like he would probably, if he was like working at a gas station, he would actually work at a gas station. If he's playing a vampire hunter, he would potentially go out and actually hunt vampires. I don't really know. But when I remember him being cast in this movie, I just always remember that episode of The Simpsons. Apparently, directors that were tossed around before John Carpenter eventually picked it up were Sam Raimi and Peter Jackson. I think John Carpenter did a pretty good job here. But those two other directors would have probably also been totally fine. I would have been really interested to see kind of like how Sam Raimi would have done this movie. It's basically a vampire western. It takes place basically like in New Mexico, and it kind of follows a lot of the same rules as westerns, where there really are almost like no rules. There's like you don't really even see. There's like a lot of like weird like standoffs, kind of like in the middle of nowhere, or in like built like small towns. So it definitely feels like a western in that regard. And when John Carpenter paid the movie, he kind of said he wanted to get away from just the kind of classic gothic vampire, just the classic tropey kind of gothic vampires. And this came out, like I said, 1998. But during this time, there was like I don't know if it was necessarily a resurgence in vampire movies, but it was vampire movies that were turning kind of the trope of vampires and going in different directions with it. Like a couple years before this, we had From Dusk Till Dawn, which is just an awesome vampire movie. We were getting into the TV show version of Buffy was starting her out. Like I think Buffy had maybe already been out for like a season or two when this came out. There was I'm trying to think of other vampire movies. I guess there was an Interview with the Vampire from a few years before this, but that was more of a classic kind of vampire movie. Like I said, From Dusk Till Dawn. I'm trying to think of what other vampire films are coming out. I guess Blade, because we just talked about Blade. Our last movie was about Blade, so and that's within the same year. Within like 2 or 3 months after Blade, we get this movie as well. So kind of definitely like a vampires were, I guess, kind of very like popular in like the mid to late '90s, or at least like starting out to be popular, and popular in a way where it was not your traditional vampire movie either. Like I said earlier in the decade, we had Bram Stoker's Dracula, we had Interview with the Vampire, and then I want to say like around the mid '90s is when we started getting like the more modern vampire movies, or set in more modern times, like From Dusk Till Dawn and this, as well as Blade. But yeah, it said he wanted to get around to that. Apparently, also potentially names that were being tossed around to play the lead character were Clint Eastwood, Kurt Russell, Bill Paxton, Al Pacino, Joe Pesci, and R. Lee Ermey. I would have just loved to see what this movie would have been like with Joe Pesci. I think it would have been like James Woods definitely kind of goes like over the top in this movie, like with like just like the way he's like killing vampires and cussing at vampires. If Joe Pesci was in this movie, I think it would. I think I would have probably liked it more just to see kind of like how crazy would Joe Pesci be in this role. That would be really interesting. Let's see what we else hit. R. Lee Ermey, and the reason they ended up going with, or John Carpenter ended up going with James Wood, is he was quoted as saying he wanted to kind of get away from the trope of just another muscle bound meathead. So they got James Woods in this film. We're going to go into some plot points now from what I remember about the movie. So, movie starts out, and there's basically a team of vampire killers that are led by James Woods. They find this, and they're in New Mexico. They find this kind of like farmhouse. They go in there. They kill a bunch of vampires in kinds of some kind of cool ways. Like they're shooting them with guns. I don't know if they're actually doing any damage to the vampires. I remember in From Dusk Till Dawn, they actually do carve like crosses into the bullets to actually make them have effects on vampires. But the vampires are getting shot at. One cool way that vampires get killed is they get shot with crossbows that are hooked up to a jeep, and the crossbow bolts are attached to a winch, which then pulls the vampires out of the buildings into the sunlight where they light on fire and explode. And then it does this thing. I don't know what this trope is called, but I think I've seen it in a few movies where you have this elite team of, in this case, it's vampire hunters, but they go in. I think they even count up that they get rid of 9 vampires pretty easily. Like I don't think anybody like really gets hurt or injured or anything like that. They kill off 9 vampires, and then they're celebrating at a motel. They're like drinking, having a good time. And then all of a sudden, like the main villain vampire shows up and more or less wipes out the entire team, with the exception of James Woods. And I'm gonna have to bring up the cast here because it's one of the Baldwin brothers. I just can't recall which one it was. Oh, so Daniel Baldwin. Okay, so basically, like the two main leads in this movie are James Woods and Daniel Baldwin. And they are the only 2 people on the team that survive. And some lady at the party that gets bitten by this main vampire also survives. So basically, their entire team gets wiped out. Like I said, it's a trope where you have this elite team, and then suddenly, like, the villain comes in and wipes out pretty much all of them with great ease. Like, there's some cool kills where the vampire sticks his hand in a guy like that and just lifts up and just like cuts the guy in half. You have people getting their throats cut and getting their heads cut off by the vampires. It's pretty brutal and pretty cool. But after that, the James Woods, we gotta bring up the name again because there's so many of these. James Wood and Daniel Baldwin and this other lady. Let me bring up her name as well. It's Cheryl Lee. Are basically fleeing this place. They steal a car. And James Woods has to go back to the motel to basically stab the rest of the teammates through the heart to make sure that they weren't bitten and they don't like reanimate as vampires. He lights the motel on fire. Daniel Baldwin takes Cheryl Lee's character, because now she's like psychically linked with this main villain vampire, and they're trying to basically use her to find out where this lead vampire is. Um, it turns out that the Catholic Church is actually hired, or James Woods' character works for the Catholic Church, basically like eliminating vampires like for them. They basically go there, and there's a thing where they're like, you got to go back to your home base and build a new team, and he gets partnered up with another priest that is eventually describes what's going on. And this lead vampire is looking for this cross, and if they do this ritual, this vampire will be able to like survive in the sunlight. He'll basically just be like unstoppable. It's kind of similar to Blade, where like basically like Stephen Dorff's character, Deacon Frost, was trying to resurrect this the like vampire god, and basically create an army of vampires that can just like take over the planet, basically take over the world. Yeah. So this vampire in this movie needs this cross to complete this ritual to become he'll be able to survive in the daylight, essentially. So after that, they eventually figure out where this vampire is going, and the vampire does eventually come into possession of this cross. And these vampires still are only coming out at night, because without this ritual being completed, they're still kind of stuck with the rule of sunlight is bad for vampires, kind of thing. So after that, they basically go there. They find that this whole church where this cross has been hidden has been, like massacred. The cross has been taken. And then they kind of all eventually get to this town where there's a big kind of final standoff with this vampire army that he's like risen up. It's like, I think they said it was him plus like 7 other vampires, so like 8 vampires. They're trying to do a thing in this, and the vampires are basically underground in this jail, kind of just like hiding from like the sun. And there's a plan to basically use this new priest character and have them go down into the basement, lure them up. They'll get hit with the crossbows and drug out into the sun, or they'll burn up. They do that a couple times, but then the winch breaks and kind of like all hell breaks loose. James Woods' character gets captured by the lead vampire, and because apparently they need the blood of a crusader to complete this ritual, because this vampire has been around, and this vampire that is doing this ritual is apparently like the original vampire, where there was like this exorcism performed on him back in like however long ago, and it ended up basically creating the vampires, or creating him as a vampire that he was able to infect other people with, becoming vampires as well. But they have that, and it turns out that the minister, or the priest, or not the priest that he's paired with currently, but the one that told him to go back to his home base and rebuild his team, is working with the vampires, because he's like, now I'm older, I want to have eternal life. I'm gonna basically like become a vampire too. And Stephen Baldwin eventually gets Daniel Baldwin. I don't know why I said Stephen, but like he gets bitten. Eventually, he is going to become a vampire at some point, but he hasn't been like infected yet. So he is able to kind of help James Woods out. And then he eventually leaves James Woods and he's like, hey, we're gonna go down to his character eventually falls in love with Cheryl Lee's character, to where they're gonna run off together and be vampires. And James Woods was like, all right, cool. Like, you help me back there. I'm gonna give you a two day head start, but I'm still gonna find you. That's kind of where the movie ends. Like I said, it's not the best vampire movie, but it's a nice, cheesy kind of popcorn movie. There's some really some very satisfying kills from both vampires getting killed and vampires killing people. So that was fun. And some of the creative ways that vampires get kind of dealt with is also pretty fun. It's currently on Netflix if you want to take a look at it there. It's not super long. It's like an hour, like 45 minutes or so. So not a hard watch at all. And if you're into kind of spooky vampire horror movies, it's a fun one for that. So I think that's going to wrap it up for this episode. We'll be back again in a few more days. Probably doing so we did an album. This is a movie. Probably be doing another video game of some kind. Don't know exactly what that's gonna be just yet. But that's gonna do it for now. So remember to like, comment, share, subscribe. We'll see you again in a few more days. Thanks again for watching. Take care and have a good one. See ya.